We're taking your office space, Dad announced over dinner. He did not ask. He did not hesitate. He said it while reaching for another fry, as casually as if he were telling me rain was expected tomorrow. I was halfway through my burger when the words landed. My stomach tightened, but years of practice took over before anger could reach my face. Okay, I said, forcing a thin smile. I'll clear it out tomorrow. Across the table, my younger brother Ethan grinned. That grin was the reason I knew the decision had already been made long before dinner. My name is Marissa Cole. I am 26 years old, and after earning my computer science degree, I moved back into my parents' Bay Area home while building a web development business. Rent in the area was brutal, and the arrangement initially sounded reasonable. I would pay $850 a month, contribute toward utilities, and save until my business became stable enough for me to leave. What no one mentioned was that I would also become the family's repair woman, technical support department, emergency fund, grocery provider, and unpaid household manager. The converted garage was the only part of the house that felt like mine. For 3 years, I had worked 60-hour weeks there. I built a custom desk from reclaimed wood, installed acoustic panels, organized every cable, and created a professional space where I could speak with clients without someone shouting from the kitchen or Ethan screaming at strangers through his gaming headset. The month before that dinner, I had landed a $5,000 contract. Ethan, 19, had failed out of community college twice and streamed video games to an audience that usually hovered somewhere between 12 and 40 people. Ethan needs the room for his equipment, Mom said without looking up from her phone. His followers are growing. This could become something serious. I stared at her. My business was already serious. It had paid for their new water heater at Christmas. It had covered Dad's transmission when his car broke down. It had purchased the lumber for the deck I rebuilt the previous summer while Ethan sat inside playing games. But Ethan's career was apparently the one that deserved room to grow. He needs privacy, Dad added. Privacy. For the son who had never paid rent, never bought groceries, and rarely washed the plate he ate from. You can work in the basement, Dad continued, as though he were offering me an upgrade. The basement had unfinished concrete walls, a low ceiling, weak Wi-Fi, and a permanent mildew smell. Half the floor was covered in storage boxes my parents had not opened in 15 years. Ethan leaned back in his chair, still smiling. Don't worry, he said. I won't mess up your setup too much. Something cold moved through me. It was not just the room. It was every moment before it. When I earned an A, Dad asked why it was not an A+. When Ethan scraped through a class with a C-, Mom bought him ice cream because he had worked so hard. At 16, I saved for 6 months to buy a laptop. Ethan received the newest phone for his 12th birthday because his friends already had one. I earned scholarships. He failed courses. Somehow, his professors were always blamed for not understanding his learning style. I had become successful because I was dependable. And because I was dependable, my family decided I did not need support. That night, I sat alone in the garage, staring at everything I had built. The desk, the monitor arms, the shelves, the careful lighting, the soundproofing panels I had installed myself. 3 years of my life existed inside that room. Tomorrow, it would belong to Ethan. I tried to work, but my concentration kept breaking apart. Every unpaid repair and forgotten promise returned to me. The furnace had cost me $2,700. Dad's transmission had cost $1,800. The deck materials had cost $1,100, not counting 2 weeks of labor. They always promised to repay me when things became easier. Things never became easier. They simply became accustomed to me paying. At 2 a.m, I closed my laptop. Then I opened an apartment website. I had $8,200 saved. It was not enough to feel secure in the Bay Area, but security had become another excuse to remain trapped. By sunrise, I had found a studio in Oakland. 500 square feet, dated kitchen, large windows, a small alcove that would fit a desk. The rent was $1,850 a month. First month, last month, and deposit would consume more than half my savings. I sent the landlord my information anyway. She replied within an hour. Available immediately. Can you view it this afternoon? I skipped breakfast and drove there without telling anyone. The landlord, Janet, was a silver-haired woman with sharp glasses and a calm voice. She showed me the apartment while sunlight poured through two wide windows. The paint was chipped near the kitchen. One cabinet door hung slightly crooked. It was perfect. No mildew, no screaming, no one waiting outside the door with a broken printer or unpaid bill. "I'll take it," I said. Janet studied me for a second. "You're certain?" I looked around the empty room. For the first time, emptiness did not feel lonely. It felt peaceful. "Yes," I said. "I'm certain." I signed the lease, transferred the money, and left with the keys in my hand. Driving home, I felt both terrified and alive. I did not tell my parents. When Mom texted asking me to buy groceries, I stopped at the store and purchased only milk and bread. She looked inside the bag when I arrived. "Where's everything else?" "My budget is tight." "But you always buy groceries on Tuesdays." I placed the bag on the counter. "Then maybe everyone can contribute this week." Her expression suggested I had insulted the family. Dad was in the garage measuring the wall for Ethan's new streaming desk. "The printer is jammed again," he called. "Can you fix it?" "Client deadline." "It'll only take 20 minutes. "No!" He stared at me as if the word did not belong in my mouth. Over the next 3 days, I stopped doing every task they had quietly assigned to me. I washed only my dishes. I did not mow the lawn. I did not reset the router when the internet slowed. I refused to drive Ethan across town because his car was making a noise he had ignored for 6 months. Small failures appeared everywhere. Dirty plates filled the sink. The grass grew uneven. The printer remained broken. Ethan's car stayed in the driveway. Then Dad sold my workbench. He knocked on my bedroom door Thursday afternoon while I was finishing a client call. "Quick thing," he said. "A guy is picking up the bench tomorrow. I got $300 for it." I slowly removed my headphones. "My workbench?" "Well, Ethan needs a proper desk, and you're moving downstairs anyway." "You sold something I built with my own money without asking me?" Dad's confidence weakened. "I thought you'd understand. It's for your brother's career." I stared at him until he shifted his weight. "We can split the money," he offered. "You can have 100. A laugh nearly escaped me. Instead, I turned back toward my computer. "Keep it." His shoulders relaxed, mistaking silence for surrender. "Consider it another investment in Ethan," I added. "That seems to be where everything I earn ends up." He left without answering. The moment the door closed, I booked a moving truck for Saturday. By Friday evening, most of my valuables were already in the apartment. Important documents, clothes, backup drives, computer equipment. Everything moved quietly while my family argued about chores downstairs. That night, Dad found me placing the last of my clothes into a suitcase. "What are you doing?" "Packing." "For what?" I folded another sweater. "Marissa." I looked directly at him. "I'm moving out tomorrow." His face emptied. "Moving where?" "I signed a lease." "When?" "Earlier this week." "Why didn't you tell us?" I zipped the suitcase. "Because you didn't ask before taking my office. You didn't ask before selling my property, and I wanted one decision in my life that belonged entirely to me." "But the basement. You thought I would move into a moldy basement and keep paying for this household while Ethan took the room where I built my career?" That's not what we intended. It is exactly what you intended. His mouth opened, but no words came. Downstairs, I heard Mom laughing at something on television. Ethan's gaming chair rolled across the living room floor. They still had no idea that the system they depended on was about to disappear. Dad's voice became quiet. Your mother is going to be devastated. I lifted the suitcase from the bed. I'm sure she will be. Then I walked past him and added, the family ATM is leaving. Saturday morning, the moving truck sat in the driveway like a confession no one could ignore. Mom stood on the porch in her robe, arms wrapped around herself, watching me carry boxes from the house. Dad kept pacing between the garage and the front door, as if movement might somehow undo what was happening. Ethan leaned against the porch railing with his arms crossed. He looked irritated more than concerned. I don't understand why you're doing this, Mom said for the fourth time. I placed another box inside the truck. You decided where I would work without asking me. Dad sold my property without asking me. I decided where I would live without asking you. That's different, she said quickly. Ethan needed the space. I turned toward her. Ethan always needs something. He straightened. What's that supposed to mean? It means you always get what you want, and everyone else is expected to rearrange their lives around you. That's not my fault. No, I said. It's theirs. But you've never exactly tried to stop it. Dad stepped between us. This is childish, Marissa. You're running away because you didn't get your way. I'm not running away. I lifted my computer tower carefully into the truck. I'm moving forward. Mom began crying. The tears would have broken me once. They had worked for years. Whenever I questioned the money I spent or the time I gave, she cried until I apologized for making her feel guilty. This time, I felt almost nothing. Why didn't you talk to us? She asked. I stopped. Then I walked into the kitchen, grabbed a marker, and pulled a sheet of paper from the printer tray. The printer itself was still broken. Across the top, I wrote, Marissa's contributions, last 12 months. Rent, $10,200. Utilities, approximately $1,800. Groceries, approximately $4,800. Furnace repair, $2,700. Dad's transmission, $1,800. Deck materials, $1,100 plus 80 hours of labor. Household repairs and maintenance, approximately $2,400. Below that, I added Ethan's financial contribution, $0. I stuck the paper to the refrigerator with a magnet. Mom stared at it. Dad came closer, reading each line slowly. It hasn't been that much, Mom whispered. I have every receipt. Dad pointed at the furnace amount. That was $2,700? You promised to repay me when things settled down. His hand dropped. That was nearly a year ago. Mom and Dad exchanged a glance that said more than either of them wanted to admit. We were planning to pay you, Mom said. You were planning to keep needing things until I stopped asking. Dad's face tightened. We gave you a place to live. I paid rent, below market, and then paid for everything else. Silence filled the kitchen. Even Ethan had stopped smirking. I looked at my parents. I have spent nearly $25,000 keeping this house running, and you still treated my workspace like it belonged to Ethan the moment he wanted it. He's younger, Dad said weakly. He's still trying to find his direction. I was working 2 jobs when I was 19. That's because you were always more responsible, Mom said. The moment the words left her mouth, she seemed to realize what she had admitted. I nodded slowly. Exactly. I was responsible, so you gave me more burdens. Ethan was irresponsible, so you protected him from every consequence. Ethan's expression darkened. You're acting like I forced you to pay for everything. No, you just benefited from it and never cared enough to ask where it came from. Dad rubbed his forehead. Marissa, we can fix this. You can start by fixing it without me. I picked up another box. My name comes off the utilities Monday. I canceled the streaming subscriptions. The internet account is being closed and transferred to my new place. Mom's face changed instantly. What do you mean you canceled the internet? I mean you need to open your own account. But Ethan needs it for streaming. I almost laughed. Even then, her first thought was Ethan. He can pay for it. I don't have money, Ethan snapped. Then get a job. His jaw clenched. I'm building something. So am I. The difference is, mine pays bills. He pushed away from the counter and stormed upstairs. His bedroom door slammed hard enough to shake a framed photograph in the hallway. Mom flinched. You didn't have to humiliate him. I listed facts. Dad followed me outside. Wait. He pulled his wallet from his pocket and held out $100. For the furnace, he said. It's a start. I looked at the money, then at him. Keep it. His face hardened with embarrassment. You said we owe you. You do, but you're going to need that more than I do. I closed the back of the truck and locked it. Mom stood in the driveway, crying openly now. Please don't do this. I already did. What are we supposed to do without you? The question was so honest that it almost hurt. Not because she would miss me, because she had no idea how to function without what I provided. You'll figure it out, I said. Then I climbed into the truck and drove away. My first week in the apartment felt unreal. The silence was so complete that I kept expecting someone to shout my name from another room. No printer jams, no requests for rides, no broken appliances placed in front of me like personal obligations. I arranged my new desk near the window. It was not as beautiful as the workbench Dad had sold, but it was mine. The first text arrived Sunday morning. The internet is not working. Did you really cancel it? I ignored it. 2 days later, Dad called. The water heater is making a strange sound. Call a repair company. They charge just to come out. Welcome to home ownership. He hung up without saying goodbye. By the end of the week, messages came constantly. The lawn was overgrown. The printer still did not work. The router they purchased kept disconnecting. Ethan could not configure his streaming equipment. Mom finally texted. Could you come for 1 hour? We'll pay you. My contractor rate is $95 an hour, 2-hour minimum, paid in advance. She did not respond. 10 days after I moved out, Dad called at 8 in the morning. His voice sounded different. Not angry. Afraid. The furnace stopped. I glanced at the calendar. It was mid-February, and the temperature had dropped into the 30s overnight. Call the HVAC company. They want $200 just to inspect it. Then pay them. We don't have it right now. Of course they did not. For years, I had been their emergency fund. What happened to your savings? Your mother used most of it for groceries and bills. I leaned back in my chair. What about Ethan? What about him? Can he contribute from his streaming income? The silence was almost satisfying. He's not making money yet, Dad admitted. Then I guess it isn't a career yet. Marissa, please. I closed my eyes. Part of me wanted to let them sit in the cold until they fully understood what my help had been worth. But another part of me knew there was a difference between setting boundaries and wanting them to suffer. Text me the error code. He did. The igniter had failed. The part cost less than $100, but installing it incorrectly could damage the control board. You have 2 options, I told him. Hire someone or replace it yourself. Can't you come? I have work. We're family. If you finish that sentence, I'm hanging up. He went quiet. Then I said, "You and Ethan can come to my apartment tonight. I'll show you the manual and the repair videos." There was a pause. "What time?" "7." They arrived together. It was their first time seeing my new place. Dad looked around the studio. "It's nice," he said awkwardly. Ethan stared at the desk by the window. "Better than the basement," he muttered. I pulled up the furnace manual and walked them through the repair. Dad looked overwhelmed. "I don't think I can do this." "I definitely can't," Ethan said. "You can learn." He rolled his eyes. I closed the laptop. "I'll fix it one final time under one condition." Dad sat straighter. "What condition?" "We have a family meeting tomorrow. Every bill goes on the table. Every expense, every contribution. Ethan gets a job, pays rent, and starts helping around the house." Ethan laughed. "You're serious?" "Completely. I'm not quitting streaming." "No one asked you to. Get a job and stream during your free time." "That will ruin everything." "A hobby that collapses when you work 8 hours a day is not supporting you." Dad looked at Ethan. "Your sister is right." Ethan turned toward him in disbelief. For the first time in his life, the golden child was hearing the word no from the man who had always protected him. The next morning, I repaired the furnace in less than an hour. Then we sat around the kitchen table. I showed my parents their actual monthly expenses, how much they had depended on my payments, and how little room existed in their budget. Ethan would pay $250 in monthly rent. He would contribute to groceries. He would mow the lawn, help with repairs, and find work within 2 weeks. "That's not fair," he said. "What part?" "I don't have money." "That is why you need employment." "I'm not working at some warehouse or fast food place." "Those are real jobs." "They're embarrassing." "What's embarrassing is being 19 and expecting your sister to finance your life." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "He struggles, Marissa." "With what?" "He's different." "He is not sick. He is not incapable. He has simply been protected from discomfort." Dad stared at the numbers I had written. Then he looked at Ethan. "You're getting a job." Ethan stood. "No." Dad's voice became firmer. "Then you'll need to find somewhere else to live." The room went completely still. Ethan looked at Mom, waiting for her to save him. She opened her mouth. Dad shook his head. "No, not this time." Ethan's face twisted with betrayal. "This family is unbelievable." He stormed out and slammed the door. Mom looked frightened. "What if he leaves?" Dad sighed. "Then he leaves." I studied him carefully. For the first time, he was not asking me to solve the problem. He was finally willing to let Ethan face one. As I prepared to leave, Mom followed me to the door. "Will you still come for dinner?" "Maybe." "Not to fix anything," she said quickly. "Just dinner." I looked back at the house. The broken printer was still sitting on the kitchen counter. A stack of unpaid bills rested beside it. Dad was studying the budget. Upstairs, Ethan's music shook the ceiling. "Once you all start changing," I said, "I'll consider it." Then I walked outside. I had not forgiven them. I did not trust them. But for the first time, I saw the smallest possibility that losing me might finally force them to become the family they had always claimed to be. 3 weeks later, Ethan got a warehouse job. He complained every day during the first week. The work was exhausting. The supervisors expected him to be on time. His paycheck disappeared almost immediately after he handed Dad $250 for rent. For the first time in his life, he understood that adulthood was expensive. Meanwhile, life in my apartment kept getting better. Without constant interruptions, my business grew faster than I had imagined. I signed new clients, expanded my portfolio, and finally spent my evenings doing things I actually enjoyed, instead of fixing someone else's emergencies. A month later, Mom invited me to dinner. I almost declined. Curiosity won. The moment I walked through the front door, something felt different. The lawn was trimmed. The sink was empty. Dad was replacing a light fixture himself while watching a tutorial on his phone. Most surprising of all, Ethan was helping instead of disappearing into his room. Dinner felt awkward at first. Then Dad cleared his throat. "We owe you an apology." The room became silent. "We didn't realize how much we depended on you until you were gone," he admitted quietly. "We kept expecting you to solve every problem because it was easier than changing ourselves." Mom wiped away a tear. "We were wrong." Neither of them tried to justify what had happened. That mattered more than they probably realized. Dad handed me an envelope. Inside was $500. "It isn't everything," he said, "but we're paying you back a little every month until every dollar is returned." I looked at the money for a long moment before slipping it back into the envelope. "Thank you." Later that evening, Ethan walked outside with me as I headed toward my car. "I owe you an apology too," he said, without looking at me. I waited. "I didn't realize how much you were carrying. I thought everything just worked." "It didn't," I answered softly. "Someone was making it work." He nodded. "I know that now." A few weeks later, he surprised me again by asking for help creating a monthly budget instead of asking for money. It was the first time he had ever wanted advice instead of a rescue. 6 months after moving out, our family looked completely different. Dad handled repairs himself whenever he could. Mom finally followed a real household budget. Ethan kept his job, continued paying rent, and treated streaming as a hobby instead of a fantasy career. As for me, my business had nearly doubled. More importantly, I had something I had never truly possessed before: peace. I still visited for dinner occasionally, but only as a daughter, not as the family's unpaid technician, banker, or emergency fund. Leaving had felt cruel in the moment. Looking back, it was the kindest decision I could have made. Sometimes, the only way people learn your value is when they are finally forced to live without everything you quietly gave them.